unlike how they got here, why they had to move here. Now we have to talk about the Texas Native American culture groups. There are different cultures that these Indians go in. You know how like you have your own little groups when you go in the playground or when you're doing anything, like you have your group of friends. Yeah. Well, they had groups too. They were known as the Western Gulf Native Americans, the Southeastern Native Americans, the Pueblo Native Americans, and the Plains Native Americans. So we're going to find out about the different Native American groups in Texas and which group they belonged in and why they belonged there. This is going to tell you a little bit about these groups. We had the Western Gulf area, and these Native Americans primarily hunted and gathered. So they had to go out and hunt their food, right? And gathering means taking in, going and getting berries and stuff. They lived near the Gulf Coast. Now let's think back to a couple years ago. Well, it was probably the second or third week of school. What in our Texas or social studies, Kaylee? Starts with an R.
Regions.
The regions of Texas. And we're going to kind of refresh our brains on that a little bit. Belonged in. So we have the Western Gulf Native Americans, who we said were hunters and gatherers, and they lived near the Gulf Coast. When you hear Gulf Coast, which region do you think that was in? We had the Mountains and Basins Range, or region. We had the Great Plains region. We had the Central Plains, and we have the Coastal Plains.
I got it.
Jayla!
Coastal Plains.
The Coastal Plains. And they were what you would call nomads. Who's heard of that word?
No.
Nomads. Cariana, you have? What does that mean? You don't know what it means, but you've heard it?
It sounds like not.
Well, they don't have a permanent home. They move around. Like sometimes I've heard of, they're kind of like when we talked about birds migrating. Well, during the winter, they'll have a certain spot where they stay. And when it starts getting warmer again, they move back to another place. They move, they transport. John, turn around. They don't have one stable place to live. They move around. They're nomadic Indians. Now we have the Southeastern Native Americans. They were farmers, and they practiced, what is that? Crop rotation. Who's ever heard of crop rotation? You have, John? Do you know what it means?
I think it means like they rotate the soil and the plants and stuff, like they move them around. I had a game about it one time.
All right. That's kind of similar. What they do with crop rotation is that they have this one field and they plant corn there. Or when they harvest that corn, are they going to turn right back around and plant corn again? No, because the soil needs a break. It needs to revive itself. So when you can plant another type of crop or something like that, and it helps juice the soil. It doesn't strip the soil. Let me think of how I'm trying to word this. They rotate, crop rotation. They rotate what type of crop they plant in that area. Yeah, they're just dying over there or something. Mm-hmm.
They didn't get any food, like no cotton or something, but they kept on.
And they didn't have anything to get, so it couldn't grow. Yes, Riley. I'll get to you.
It's like a pattern, like if
They don't plant the same thing one right after the other. They have to keep planting different stuff in that area.
So they can have more food.
They could continue growing their crops. It says they use tools made of wood and animal bones.
Ew.
So the Native Americans, they were very resourceful people. When I say resourceful, they used every single part of an animal and they killed it. Like if they went and killed a deer, they would bring that deer back. They would use its horns. They would use its fur. They would eat, the meat and everything else. They used every single part of it.
You're my heart.
Yeah, they probably found a way to do something with the heart. Because what's your heart? It's a muscle. If they didn't have a Walmart to go to every day, Tyner. They didn't have a Walmart to go to get their groceries or get their meat. They had to use what they had. It says they also hunted wild game. So that wild game would be like deer, rabbits.
Bear.
Depending on if there was bear in that area. They probably did. Yes, Jayla?
That's probably the Central Plains.
You think? We'll find out. What about the Pueblo Indians? They were also farmers. And they hunted what? Buffalo. So in their area, their region of where they were, was buffalo. There were plenty of buffalo for them to eat. What do you think they used the buffalo for? Michaela?
I was asking something else that went to that. If they fish, why would they use an arrow?
You've never heard of bow fishing? That's a thing now too. They have fishing rods.
Yeah, they tie a string. That's
And they would shoot it. They probably had spears and stuff they could go stand in with. They probably had traps.
they had to make.
They did to make everything they had.
They could.
We had play Indian. What do you use buffalo for?
Yes, I think no.
Macy. Tate. What else do you think they used them for, John?
Like the buffaloes up hill.
Yeah.
So the 90 is like I know on donkeys at the end of their little tails they have like a whole bunch of little threads that can use them little things to like sew up something like that.
Ooh, that's a good one, John. Good job. Haley?
Well, the fetus of the tribe could use the bones for something.
They could use bones for something.
They could use
Tyner?
for shoes. And they could use like the fur for patching up clothes. And they could use
So are you saying they use fur for clothes?
yeah.
Yeah. What else do you think? Think of the Indians who had teepees. Ooh, what is their teepees made out of? Cariana? Jayla, stop calling out. They use to make the teepees, they used the animal skins and the furs. They used it for everything. Yes, they were very resourceful. Now we're going to talk about the Plains Indians. They were nomads, and what do we say nomads were?
They didn't have
Just raise your hand. Jamarian. They didn't have a permanent home. They moved around. Why do you think they moved around? To find food. They had to follow their food. It wasn't just handed to them, Cariana. It wasn't. And read this last part for me, Michaela. 1700s of horses. So after the 1700s, the Europeans have come over and they brought horses. And those Plains Indians, They had a long way to go when they were hunting and doing stuff like that. So, do Haley. Charlie, what do you did for the Indians? They said that. Gariana. They get away. Things. They used horses, like if they're nomads, to help carry all their teepees. Or they had teepees. They had to take that stuff apart and take it to the next place. Well, do you think it's really heavy? Yes. They pull stuff and help them move around. Texas Native Americans, which groups they were in. We're going to talk about that. So we're going to talk about the Western Gulf culture area. The Karankawa. Say that with me. Karankawa. Everybody say it. Karankawa. Now say Karankawa. All right. So I think we have that down. Well, look where it says. So the Gulf Coastal Plains Indians are Native Americans. So this is around where Galveston. How many of y'all have been to Galveston or have heard of Galveston? And Corpus Christi. That's where those Indians were located. And then it shows they have housing. Y'all will read about housing in just a little bit, okay? So the Gulf Coastal Plains Indians were the Karankawas. Do you think they were the only ones who were in that group? No. Let's go to the next one. Okay, I'm not going to lie. I've had trouble trying to say this one. Coquiliticon. Coquiliticon. I did, but I'm going to tell you. Okay, everybody listen. I did type it in to see how to pronounce it, but the people who were pronouncing it, I think they were Native Americans, and it was very hard for me to try to say it like they said it. I don't have the accent. I don't. Coquiliticon. I think that was very similar. Native Americans. Southern Texas. No, we don't. The food sources of buffalo, deer, I think, which pigs, and then they had fish. Maybe they might not have had chickens. They probably got it from birds, from all kinds of. Yeah, they eat lizards and snakes. Ugh. Oh, and worms. Ugh.
I ate a worm one time. That was kind of nasty.
Oh, look at this. It says that they had all night celebrations of fasting and dancing. So they had big parties. Yeah. Maybe they kept themselves busy so that they wouldn't realize they hadn't ate. And attacked by Apache and died of European diseases. We talked about that, didn't we? Europeans brought diseases over to this area. They did. Okay, let's see what else. Ooh, we're on to the southeastern. The southeastern Native Americans.
These are in
The Caddo, where does it say they're located?
Eastern Texas.
No, we don't.
We live in the east.
We live in Northeast Texas. So okay, class. Y'all need to stop talking out so much, okay? I really love how enthusiastic y'all are, but we gotta be able to listen, right? Okay. So the Caddo Native Americans, they were in our area. They could have lived right out here. And y'all are gonna read some more about the Caddos as well. Some may have plastered the outside with mud. That's their housing. How many of y'all built y'all's houses with mud?
No.
John, you built your house with mud?
Okay, so I had a box, tore it up, and then I got bored of carrying another box, so I got me a whole bunch of mud and water, and I made me a mud house.
Oh. All right. So look, we the method when they were planting because they're what? Farmers. Wild plants, hunted. Why do you think they were able to fish?
The bow.
Maybe the bow or spears. But what do you to be able to fish? Why do you have to near water? Do you think that these Native Americans, when they were, that they keep on? Think I got to go somewhere where there is a water supply. Plenty of wild game, like fish and deer and buffalo. But we also need to make sure that our soil is good so we can grow our own food. Like the beans and squash. So it says the Caddo had rich farmland and they farmed corn. We talked about that, right? Where it says men wore breech cloths. Well, John, they weren't just pants. Like Native Americans, Tyner, I need you to sit up. Ava, sit up. They didn't have a lot of stuff covered. It's very hot. They didn't have air conditioning, so they had to keep themselves cool. So they didn't wear a whole lot of clothes. Have you ever heard like of the loincloth?
No.
Like Tarzan?
Oh, yeah.
Jamarian. Well, that's the kind of stuff Native Americans wore. Tyner. During the summer, they wore that kind of stuff during the summer. Now, when it got cold, Tyner, stop. They had to make their own clothes. What did they make their clothes out of? Furs and skins of animals. What does it show here? What did the Caddo have? Permanent villages. So were they nomadic people? No, they weren't.
They were the opposite.
And you want to know something? What states are connected to us that we can get to easily?
Oklahoma.
Raise your hand. Miley?
Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and I don't know
That's perfect. Oklahoma and Arkansas and Louisiana. You know that Caddo Indians lived there too? Mm-hmm. They did. They were native to Texas. So maybe they had to move lives for themselves. Now, who
To the other one. Turn it back.
oh,
Here.
they y'all down. They had tattoos. frequently to be called on. To protect your skin? Tanner?
I don't know, like, put them on his skin.
Okay. Well, we're talking about why they had tattoos. They would have tattoos and they would wear their hair a certain way because it identified them with the Caddo tribe. That told other Native Americans who might have saw them, oh, that is a Caddo Indian. That's the group he belongs to. But here in a little bit, y'all are going to become experts of a tribe. So y'all are going to tell us all about the Caddos and other Indians we're going to talk about. So now we have the Pueblo Plain Indians. This is that word, the Humano Indians. They said, I have read that the Humano Indians, they weren't as well known as like the Caddo or the Apache or the Comanche because they were a smaller group. They lived in a part of Texas where they didn't have a whole lot of resources. They lived where there wasn't a lot of water, there wasn't a lot of wild game, and the soil wasn't very good. So they couldn't make their own food. They were a very, very small tribe. Yes, Michaela.
This is going to be one of my favorite groups. This is my favorite group.
This one is?
It says corn in it.
Corn. That's why. All right. Look at how they said their housing is.
Like dove bricks.
See, yeah, dry clay.
All right. Well, some of y'all are going to, John and Tanner, y'all are going to be able to read about this. And on top of that, over the next few weeks in our studies weekly, Native Americans. Yeah, they were killed by European diseases when the Europeans came. So the Humano had no immunity, and many of them died when the Europeans came. And droughts. So less water for irrigation, less crop failure. Plant because of no water. Put that up. And it drove the buffalo. Buffalo had to move on. And then a lot of rivals with other Indian tribes. They weren't very nice.
You're shaking it.
So the Humano lost control of a lot of their land because of the Comanche. Now the Plains Indians. The Chautauqua. They're north central plains of Texas and southeast edge of Edwards Plateau. We talked about Edwards Plateau when we looked at the regions, didn't we? Yeah, we did. So, their housing, they use teepees. You know, not all Native Americans, like we've seen on here, use teepees for housing. Ava, sit up. Jayla, sit up for me. And their food supply were rabbits, rattlesnakes. Look at that. Skunks. Ooh. Berries, fruits, and nuts. But you know what? If you didn't have this local Walmart over here, would you be eating skunks if that's all you had? No. I bet you would if you were hungry. Oh my goodness. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to move on. Shh. Class.
Yes.
So, the Apache, it shows Lipan Apache. The Apache was broken up into several different groups, and this was one of the groups. Mescalero Apache. I'm probably not saying that right. And they lived in West Texas. And they lived in teepees. And their food source were buffaloes because they're the plains, right? A lot of the buffalo were in the plains areas. Huh?
So they could just freely.
You know what? They probably weren't a very well-known tribe. So that might be why.
They painted their body.
And they were skilled at riding horses. So what group most? The Plains Indians. Good job. In the west of Texas Hill Country, it's by Rio Grande. The Rio Grande's, remember? And let's look at how they dressed. They had the men. Oh, the left side, they had really short hair. But on the right side, they had long, beautiful hair. Why do we say that people wore their hair a certain way and the Indians were, Riley? So you could tell them apart. You could tell what tribe they came from. Tyner, sit up. And they also wore feathers in their hair. It's pretty cool. And they had their ears pierced. They had earrings. You like that, John? And the women, they wore copper bracelets. Copper bracelets.
Like, what is copper?
No, I'm sure that's not all they wore. But that's how you... If you had... Like, that's probably just one of the things they were known for to wear. That's how you could tell them apart from other Indian tribes. They ate beans, corn, pumpkins, watermelons, and buffalo.
Beans, corn, and watermelon kind, but pumpkins and buffalo I'm not a fan of.
Yeah. And they were also skilled at riding horses because of they were in the plains. So the Europeans bringing... Ava, would you stop playing with pencils, please? So they were affected by the Europeans bringing horses too, but in a good way. Now we have the Comanche. Where I have that they are located, they're located around where the Great Plains and the Central Plains kind of meet. They were kind of at that halfway point. They also lived in teepees. I don't know. I've seen teepees spelled a lot of different ways. Their food source, they had them wealthy. How do you think that made them wealthy? Like money? Yeah. No, it's not the same like paper money. They had like they probably furs and meat and all of that good stuff. They so like we said, but all of them, it showed nomads. They were became nomads, became plains nomads, and the Comanche became plains nomads. They migrated to Texas, soon controlled much of the Texas plains. The Comanche Native Americans, they weren't very nice either. Alrighty. This again shows where they came to Texas from Asia. Now look, this shows, I thought this was really neat. This shows where a lot of their food sources were. Like, they had corn, the circular symbol. They had corn throughout here.
Yeah, buffalo.
Along the edges. Why do you think they had so much corn or other food crops? Why do you think they had it along this part?
That's water.
Cariana, do you know? Shh, Jayla. So, because they were close to the water, it had a lot of water supply through this area, right? A lot of water supply that helped them grow their crops. Now this, we saw where a lot of those tribes were located. Well, this is a map of today. These are the cities we know. So it shows you where those tribes were located. It kind of gives you a better idea where they're located in today's time.
They were located in El Paso.